Can Brian Daboll really get the job done for the Giants? We're going to talk about that coming up next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm Patricia Traina, and happy Monday. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We are back with all new shows as promised here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode is brought to you in part by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the games start. And as always, folks, thank you so much for making a Locked On Giants podcast your first listen of the day, or if you're watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. On today's episode, we're going to talk about head coach Brian Daboll and if he can get this job done to turn around the Giants. Now, as you guys know, I've had an opportunity to go to all the, most of the spring practices, all the spring practices that were open to the media. Got a chance to intermingle a little bit with head coach Brian Daboll. Got a chance to witness, how he runs practices, how he deals with the media, just all kinds of different things. And I'm going to talk about some of that on today's show. We'll talk about his demeanor. We'll talk about his approach, the player response. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the concerns I still have, as to whether or not I'm sold as to whether he can get the job done and turn this Giants program around from being a cellar dweller to a team that can compete. So all that and more on today's Locked On Giants podcast. Again, happy to have you with us. Let's go into Daboll's demeanor. Now, a lot of times I've gotten questions from you guys and gals asking me, what is Daboll like? Is he, everything he looks like on TV or in the interviews that you see, what is he like? And the best way to describe what Daboll is like is this is a man who is, I don't want to say making it up as he goes along. He has an idea as to what he wants to accomplish. He has an idea as to what he wants to accomplish, but he's not necessarily married to any one specific idea on how to get there. So there's flexibility. In other words, he recognizes that there's more than one way, to pluck the proverbial chicken, so to speak. So Daboll is a guy who, I don't want to say is so laid back that it's like, you have to worry. It's not like, super laid back. He is relaxed. All right. But there's a sense of urgency that you can kind of detect from listening to him and watching him in action. All right. So by that, I mean, he's laid back enough to where it's okay if in the spring players make mistakes. It's okay if, a play that they designed in the lab doesn't work out and they have to scratch it. Those are the types of mistakes that he's willing to tolerate right now, because look, without mistakes, you're not going to have any growth. You're not going to know what works. You're not going to know what doesn't work. And he's perfectly fine with mistakes being made. It doesn't mean that, he wants to see them made, but he's fine with them being made. Now, what that has done for the players is quite simply that has allowed them to relax a little bit and absorb what is being taught. All right. So just think about it for a moment here. If you were being taught to do something new with the expectation that you had to go out, say that next day and perform it flawlessly, chances are you're going to be so uptight that you're going to screw it up, that you're going to make a mistake, that something's going to go wrong. Maybe you won't totally grasp what needs to be done. Maybe, you think you got it, but you forget a part of it. So that's what I'm seeing with the players now. The players they're learning, they spent the entire spring in what Daboll described as a teaching camp. The players are learning that, this is what is expected of them, and how to perform, how to conduct themselves, and so on and so forth. But mistakes get made. And how relaxing, or maybe relaxing is not the right word, but how cool is it that they don't have to worry about the coaches coming down on them and putting them in the doghouse. Sometimes you see a player make a mistake and he's pulled out of practice, or he's made to run laps, or, he loses his spot on the depth chart. There was none of that with Brian Daboll this spring. It was, look, we're going to teach you. You're going to learn to the best of your ability. Then we're going to go back and we're going to gauge what kind of job we did teaching you, we being the coaching staff, and how you, the players, learn. What do we have to adjust? What do we have to change up when we get to training camp? So that was the point of the whole spring, one of the underlying points, besides obviously, installing the new systems and whatnot. And it's really a good way to do things because it takes some of the pressure off the Giant players. It allows them to have fun again. I mean, a word that we heard used a lot by the players was energized. The team is energized. They're energetic. Everybody had some pep in their step. All right. It's been a while since, it's been like that. And you would think that, a team coming off a 4-win season like the Giants are, that there would be a little bit more of a sense of urgency, maybe a little bit more uptightness. Well, there is a sense of urgency, but it's being done in stages. It's not, okay, it's do or die right now. We've got to go and we've got to, slay the proverbial dragon. No, they're building up, a procedure. They're building up communication and understanding of one another. And they're going to work on all that stuff and continue to work on it as we get into the summer. So that is the environment that Brian Daboll and his demeanor have laid down for the players. And it's been very widely accepted by the players. You see it in the body language of the guys. You hear it when they talk. You see it in how they approach practice, having fun with one another. It's become fun again, because when a job is no longer fun and it becomes a chore, then it's time to reassess where you're at. Daboll has brought back some of the fun for these guys. All right. Now, what will this necessarily lead to, or what are the next steps? Stick around and I'll tell you right after this. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, if you're looking for that special gift for someone and you can't decide, or maybe you're just ready to pop the question to that special someone, BlueNile.com has you covered either way. BlueNile.com has jewelry experts on hand 24/7 via phone or chat to help you find a gift within your budget range. Or if you're feeling creative, use Blue Nile's online tools to create the perfect one-of-a-kind diamond ring. Whatever your occasion, make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more with the code Locked On. Put your faith in Blue Nile and know that every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com and remember that promo code Locked On for $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I am Patricia Traina, and the ultimate NBA mock draft starts on June 16th. And with over 50 insiders, nothing equals the ultimate NBA mock draft. The Locked On NBA Big Board draft experts plus the Odyssey insiders will be making their first pick June 16th. So go ahead, search Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and follow now so you don't miss a pick. All right, Giant fans, we are talking about Brian Daboll. And if Brian Daboll can get the job done, can he be the guy that the Giants are looking for? And in the last segment, I talked about how Daboll, his demeanor, what makes him different? How has he kind of gone about, running things in the spring? And, right now, the thing to remember, obviously, is that you're in the spring. There's no pads. There's no live competition. It's quite a different battle, quite a different ball game, if you will. There's no depth chart. There's no nothing. It's just all about learning. So what's next for this Giants team under Brian Daboll? How might things change from what we saw in the spring versus what we are going to see when the Giants report to training camp as a full squad on July 26th? All right, so let's talk a little bit about that and what the expectations are. Daboll is going to be looking for these guys basically to hit the ground running when they show up for training camp. The first practice, which is going to be July 27th, actually. The reporting date is July 26th. The first practice will be, I think, July 27th, and there will the acclimation period, that is. So the springtime was spent teaching. Okay, where do you go for this stretch line? Where do you go for your different drills? What are your position coaches expecting of you? All that good stuff. So now gone will be the rep chart that Daboll had during the spring. Remember, he had a rep chart as opposed to a depth chart, which is why you saw certain guys line up with the starters. You saw certain guys line up with the second string or the third string. And for anybody who, puts stock on lineups and what they saw or what they read from the spring, you're not doing yourself any favor, because as Daboll said, there were different packages. So maybe it might look like a guy was on third string when in fact he was part of a specific package that happened to have a third string guy or a second string guy. So you can't really read into that. But moving ahead, that's where we're going to start to get some clarity. Who's going to be the starting offensive line? Who's going to be the starting defensive line, the starting linebackers, the starting defensive secondary, so on and so forth. That's where you're going to start to see some clarity. All right. And that's also where you're going to start to see, hopefully, this team start to be prepared for the regular season. Now, I don't have to tell you how last year a big mistake that former head coach Joe Judge made was he didn't really spend enough time in retrospect getting his players ready for the start of the season. He was too concerned with giving guys at the bottom of the depth chart an opportunity to prove themselves. Okay, great. That's all well and good. But training camp wasn't the time to do that. Remember, the Giants were in year 2 of the same system across the board. If you wanted to find out what guys brought to the table, you could have probably gotten an idea in the spring if you really, really wanted to, if that was your objective. So that brings up the next point, and that is that the practices, while at times they were intense under Judge, they weren't intense where they needed to be. And by that, I mean, Judge was very big on having guys run and condition and all that stuff. Okay, great. But when it came time to taking snaps and giving, the starters enough snaps, giving the guys that were injured who maybe could do certain things, but, couldn't do everything, giving those guys snaps, that's where Judge came up short. Daboll is taking a different approach, or will be taking a different approach from what I understand. All right. So he's got an idea roughly of where everybody is, how everybody learns, how quickly everybody learns. All right. So now when we go into training camp, the object is going to be getting the guys on the field to do, to run certain plays, certain packages. Now, if somebody is injured, guess what? That guy's not going to be sitting on the sideline twiddling his thumb or watching with the rest of the media and the fans. That guy is going to be out there doing what he can within reason. All right. That is a big difference that I think we can expect this summer from Daboll versus Joe Judge. Another thing we can expect, I believe, is that while, yes, there will be some conditioning, I don't think Daboll is going to overdo it with these guys. All right. So post-practice sprints every day, I don't think that's going to happen. Will it happen, once in a while or as needed? Absolutely. And it should. But every day, no. They're going to manage that. They're going to balance it because, look, Daboll is cognizant of the fact that this team has been highly injured. And you want to keep that trend up, run these guys down to the nub. And Daboll, I don't think, doesn't want to do that. He needs a healthy group. At the same time, to avoid rust. So let's say, for example, Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, and Kadarius Toney aren't ready for the start of training camp. We'll use them as an example. Rather than have them sit and be spectators, get them on the field, let them do what they can so that they don't get completely rusty. And that's going to be a big difference because Think back to last year, folks. Galladay, Tony, they all missed practice time in the summer. And when it came time to set foot on the regular season field, the offense looked rusty. It looked out of sync, and it just didn't look good. So Daboll, is going to try to avoid a slow start with this team by having the guys that are injured do what they can, just like they did in the spring, to a certain degree without jeopardizing them and whatever, particular injury they might be nursing. So it's a little different approach. It's a more modern approach, and it's a smarter approach. And, I think it will pay off dividends for the Giants because, they've gotten off to slow starts the last couple of years. I'm trying to remember the last time they actually opened up a season winning a game, let alone going 2-0. With the schedule they have this year, they could possibly do it, but they need to be ready. And the coach has to have them ready. And that's the approach that I believe Daboll is going to take with them. So thus far, folks, we've got a pretty good honeymoon going with Brian Daboll. So what are my concerns about Daboll moving forward? Well, hang around and I'll tell you coming up next. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, BetOnline.net is the only place that offers the best information on the latest odds, contests, and player props for all your sports betting needs. No matter what sport you're into, BetOnline.net has you covered. Plus, they offer everything you need to know for live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head on over to BetOnline.net today to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the games start. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. I'm Patricia Traina, back from a long weekend. And before I continue on with today's show topic about Brian Daboll as the head coach and can he turn things around for the New York Giants, just real quick, want to let you know that I am in my summer schedule now. So we'll be doing shows about roughly 3 times a week now. Monday, Wednesday, Friday is the plan. But if I get another topic or a guest or something like that, I might, throw in an extra show here and there. But we are in the dead period of the NFL, or at least the Giants are. The Giants are done with their off-season program. So not a whole lot to talk about, but we'll find stuff to obviously cover for you. And we'll continue to bring you what we can, as the schedule, unfolds. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on the schedule. And also some of you have asked about Twitter Tuesday. So since I don't plan for a show tomorrow, how about if we get enough questions in, I'll do a show on Thursday, even though I'm on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. If I get enough of your questions in, I will do a show for you on Thursday answering your questions. We'll call it Twitter Thursday. So we'll see how that goes. And I look forward to hopefully hearing from some of you. You can email the questions to LockedOnGiantsPodcast@gmail.com. You can post them if you're on YouTube in the community forum. You can tweet them to me. My Twitter handle's below. Just tag them Ask P Train, PTRAIN. So get them to me. All this information, by the way, is in the show notes. So check them out and look forward to hearing from you. All right. So we are talking about head coach Brian Daboll, and can he really turn this program around? Now, so far, as I mentioned in the first 2 segments, the Giants are in a honeymoon stage with Daboll. Everything the guy has done this spring, basically since taking the job, he's done, there's nothing to complain about. Let's put it to you that way. There's nothing to raise your eyebrow and say, oh my gosh, what the heck was he thinking? So the honeymoon is going strong. But there's going to be some tough sledding ahead. And let's talk about that, because to me, that is the biggest question mark for Brian Daboll. And I'm going to talk about the tough sledding, and I'm going to tell you why I think I feel better about him handling it than maybe, a Joe Judge, for example. All right. So what is the tough sledding ahead? Well, as sure as I'm sitting here and you're listening to this, there's going to be adversity. Guys are going to get hurt. Unexpected things are going to pop up. And most importantly, this team hasn't played a game yet. There's going to be wins, hopefully more wins than we've been accustomed to, but there's also going to be some losses. And all of the adversity that combines together, how will this team respond to that? How will Daboll respond to a bad loss? How will he respond to a key player getting injured that he ends up losing? How will he respond if a player, God forbid, gets arrested or runs into some kind of trouble and he has to discipline him? How's he going to respond to all that? Now, that part we have not seen from Daboll because, like I said, so far it's been smooth sailing. It's basically been an event-free spring for the Giants. So how will that all transpire? Well, Daboll, here's the difference between Daboll and a Joe Judge. Joe Judge last year spoke about a time when he was going through adversity. I guess it was with New England, and how there was concern that they might get fired, they being the assistant coaches. And I think at the time they had a winning record, but it wasn't a dominating record. The difference, I think, with Brian Daboll is he has faced adversity in his coaching career. Maybe not as a head coach, obviously, but somewhere along the line, I'm sure he's had a major injury, or he's had a player that he was counting on not be available for whatever the reason, or he's had to discipline guys, whether it be benching them, whether it be cutting them, whatever the case may be, as a coordinator, or, just, even recommending to the head coach, to get rid of a guy. So Daboll has had that experience in his DNA. So I am a little bit more confident that he will be able to handle the bad times as well as the good. I think under Daboll, the Giants will never get too high and they will never get too low. They will somehow strike a balance, because look, when something bad happens, you can sit there and you can let it destroy you and eat you up, or you can learn from it and you can move on and grow. I think with Daboll, that's the approach they're going to take, because remember, in practice, he's okay with mistakes because his attitude is, okay, look, if we make a mistake, we'll learn from it and we'll move forward and we'll grow from it. Well, it's going to be the same thing with adversity, because adversity sometimes can be born of bigger mistakes. All right. A player, it breaks curfew, for example. That's a bigger mistake as opposed to, say, dropping a pass in practice. So I just think that the foundation Daboll has laid down is going to enable this Giants team to really come together, build up the bond that they've started to build up that camaraderie, build up that culture. And I think they're going to be in a much better position, probably one of the better positions they've been in quite some time, to overcome adversity. All right. And if they can do that, yes, there's going to be times when there'll be a bad loss. Every team has them. Yes, there's going to be times when something goes astray, but the real test of a tea bag is when you throw it into hot water and you see how it responds. And call me an internal optimist, that's fine. But I just feel, based on what Brian Daboll has shown, based on how the program is being built, and also with the support in the front office from Joe Shane and ownership, that the Giants are going to be able to withstand a lot of hot water, not just this year, but in years to come. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for us here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. Appreciate you for tuning in. And thanks for making the LockedOn Giants podcast your first listen of the day. Now make your second listen the LockedOn NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and latest news from around the league, because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. Follow LockedOn NFL every day on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right. And don't forget, Giant fans, we are on a summer schedule. So the next show will be Wednesday. And if I get enough questions, I'll do a Twitter Thursday for you. And then, of course, we'll do a show on Friday. So no show tomorrow for Tuesday, but we'll be back at you on Wednesday. So until then, everybody, have a fantastic day.